I see my name in shining lights. Yeah, a different city every night. Oh, I swear the world better prepare for when I'm a billionaire.
It's time to get down to business on the weekend's #1 business program. Known as the King of Networking, your host, Shalom Klein, has worked with thousands of entrepreneurs and created countless jobs. So, to success, let's get down to business.
And indeed, we're all about small business jobs and entrepreneurship. You're on with Get Down to Business, and I'm your host, Shalom Klein. Remember, you can always download podcasts from Get Down to Business on my website at shalomklein.com. And while you're there, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Shalom Klein. It's going to be a jam-packed week of content and information you will not want to miss. I'm super excited to kick off the program with a conversation with Todd Caponi. Todd is an acclaimed author, speaker, and sales leadership professional. He's the CEO and founder of Sales Melon LLC, teaching company salespeople and leaders. And he is now the author of a brand new book, The Transparent Sales Leader, which we'll talk all about. Todd, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, sales is certainly something that, a lot of people sort of look at the quantity. They're constantly looking at how many leads do I have? Obviously, people think that if you have more leads, then it's going to mean essentially more sales. It's math. I know you argue that that logic doesn't always work. So, Todd, I'd love to get to know the person behind the microphone and the subject matter expert, in this case about sales. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I kind of call myself I was like a B plus sales rep forever. But I always knew that like coaching, leadership, training, and like I've always been a nerd for the science of learning and behavioral science. And so I ended up a long time ago, I quit my job and I bought a sales training company. Kind of ran that into the ground, but that taught me all of the pieces around how to facilitate, how to get learning into the human brain, and really amped up my nerdery for sales methodology. And my career kind of took off from there. I'm sure we're going to talk about this, but back in 2016, I had a revelation about the future of sales and how to optimize it. And like a lunatic and a nerd, I quit my job, wrote my first book, The Transparency Sale, and yeah, now I'm teaching, speaking, and sharing my nerdery for all that wants to hear it.
That is awesome. That is fantastic. So again, I'm chatting with Todd Caponi, who's the CEO and founder of Sales Melon, and he has taught literally hundreds and probably thousands of sales people and leaders. So Todd, you clearly have a story behind writing The Transparent Sales Leader. Tell us a little bit about it. How did you decide that this is what the market needs with so many other sales leadership books that are out there?
Well, I forgot to mention, I'm a huge sales history nerd. I've got a collection of books and magazines from the late 1800s, early 1900s. So when cool people are doing cool stuff on the weekends, like I'm sitting down with like a 1907 edition of Salesmanship magazine. And you're right, there has been literally hundreds of books written on sales leadership, and I was not about to write a book that's already been written. This
Absolutely.
one came from a spot where when I first got promoted into sales leadership, like I don't know about you or your listeners, like thinking about, even if you're an entrepreneur and you've developed a product, and then you're like, hey, do I need to go buy a plaid jacket and some gold chains to get into selling? No. And it all started with sales process and sales structure. When I first got promoted into sales leadership, within about 2 days, I realized I was kind of like a dog chasing a car down the street, where every day I had no idea where I was going. I'm too much of a nerd for that, so I created a structure. And then over the years, optimized each element of the structure of sales leadership with behavioral science, which a lot of that is new. And that became the basis for this book. And, as the economy tightens, the necessity for us to optimize our go-to-markets, and that starts with leadership, has to happen right now. And we're like pushing this book out, even with printing supply chain issues, like we're getting it out.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's great. Salespeople, I've always been fascinated with the personality. So you talk about something that I find very, very interesting about sort of the psyche of salespeople. So I have to ask, and this came up in a separate conversation, are salespeople coin operated? What truly drives salespeople to stay, perform, and become advocates for you and your organization? So it's not just call it a job.
Well, yeah, that was the old axiom forever, right? And that really came from the early 1900s when you didn't have Social Security, you didn't have a 401k. Like, yeah, you had to go get money, and there was a chance that you get sick and you have to like whatever you banked was what your family was going to have to live on. So we had to be coin operated 100 years ago. But today, if you think your team is coin operated, you're right if you're doing it wrong. And to your point, there are elements that drive us intrinsically. And if we're doing it right, sales becomes our variable compensation, if done right, becomes the reward for doing work we're intrinsically inspired to do instead of the reason that we do it. And there's a framework that I talk about in the book, which are really the elements that go into like why we as human beings, but specifically salespeople, want to show up, want to stay, want to do our best, and want to become advocates for our organization. And I take everybody through that in kind of nerdy detail, but hopefully tactical, like immediately actionable detail too.
Absolutely. So again, I'm chatting with the author of The Transparent Sales Leader. We've already sort of touched on this topic about transparency. So what does that mean? Does it mean that a salesperson is authentic? What does that mean? And what is sort of your homework assignment for the salespeople that might be listening to Get Down to Business? And what can they do to become more of that transparent sales leader in the week ahead?
Well, yeah, I mean, transparency is a bit of an overused term, but here, I'll give you the backstory on that. And it was the reason why I quit my first job and wrote a book. I live in Chicago area here in the suburbs, and I was the CRO of a company called Power Reviews here in Chicago. And you could probably guess from the name, we were in the ratings and reviews space. So we helped retailers and brands collect and display ratings and reviews. What happened was we did a research study with Northwestern University here locally that just looked at consumer behavior around when a website's acting as a salesperson, what do people do? And this is really important for anybody who's listening, who's thinking about influencing anybody to do anything. We can look at our own behavior as consumers, and the data revealed 3 points, 2 of which changed my life like it only happened to a nerd. The first data point that didn't was that we all read reviews today. So Shalom, you probably, when you're buying something you haven't bought before online, you're probably reading reviews. But the 2 data points that changed my life. Number 1, 85% of us, so almost all of your listeners here probably go to the negative reviews first, right? Mm-hmm. You skip the 5s and you go right to the 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. And when a product has an average review score between a 4.2 and a 4.5, that is optimal for purchase conversion, meaning a product that has negative reviews right under it will sell better than a product that's got nothing but perfect 5-star reviews. Now, that was as a website acting as a salesperson. In my nerdery, I was like, all right, why does that happen? Does that apply to human and B2B selling? And I found out emphatically that it does, that when we lead with our flaws, lead with something a competitor does better than us, lead if we're at the high end of the market in terms of price, leading with that, it's incredibly disarming, but it speeds sales cycles. It helps you win more often, and it helps you lose faster the deals you're going to lose anyway, so you can get on to the ones that you should win. Now, that feels great, right? Transparency, fantastic. However, we now have to do it anyway because of the proliferation of reviews and feedback and everything we do, buy, and experience. That was the transparency sale, not only the science, but how do you apply it to everything you do? The transparent sales leader kind of takes that to another level and says, hey, we as sales leaders, like who wants to run behind somebody who thinks they're perfect? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sales leaders that embrace their flaws and embrace what they're trying to get to, that's what you create motivation and that intrinsic inspiration. It starts with leadership.
Absolutely. And again, I'm chatting with the fantastic author of the fantastic read, The Transparent Sales Leader. We're quickly coming to the close of our time together, but I have to say, Todd, I read your article in Sales, the second best thing to winning is losing quickly. And I have been saying that for the past decade to anybody who's willing to listen. And so I know you've got a lot more advice, tips, and information through your website, which I'd love to share with our listeners because that's perhaps the best homework assignment we can leave them with is to pick up a copy of The Transparent Sales Leader, but get in touch with you. Todd Caponi, how can we find the book and how can we get in contact?
Yeah, I mean, toddcaponi.com is the easiest place to go. I'm also on LinkedIn. If you want to follow along and share my nonsense there, then yeah, to your point, my book is available pretty much anywhere books are sold.
Fantastic. Again, the book is called The Transparent Sales Leader. We've talked a little bit about transparency. We've talked about sales structure, process, and we've talked about essentially the psyche and the motivation behind salespeople. So I'm really, really looking forward to continuing reading a copy of the book on my own. Todd Caponi, thanks so much for joining us. We'll have to squeeze in a quick break here and get down to business, but when we return, we're going to talk with some amazing additional guests, entrepreneurs making a difference in their communities, because that's what we do here on Get Down to Business. You can download the past 8+ years of shows all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship on my website at shalomklein.com. And be sure to check out our sponsors, Tom Mirabali from healthplanchicago.com, healthplanchicago.com for a free consultation. You could also call them 630-863-3477, 630-863-3477. Back in a moment and Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. Don't touch that dial.